Hola, mi hinchada. Welcome to another edition of High Trust Low Context, episode 4. Work shoots. I'm your host, El Chaco, and I've got with me tonight another awesome guest. He's not only one of my favorite pro wrestlers to have ever worked with, he's also one of my best friends on the planet. He's none other than the American monster himself, Jason Sullivan. Welcome to the show, Sully. Oh, hold on. I got your mic.
Open hand slap right there. What's up, brother? What's up, man?
I had your mic muted for some reason. Anyways, my bad. I'm already off to a hot start.
I came in hot, and you buried my comeback.
I love it. Sully is a skilled veteran of the squared circle who's wrestled in multiple states across the USA, in Canada, and even down here in Paraguay, where he also currently resides. He's trained by the late, great Playboy Buddy Rose. And Jason, you've had the pleasure of working with many different wrestlers. Can you name off a few of the people that you've been able to work in the ring with or work around?
Let me try to go back to the beginning. Like I've had Playboy Buddy Rose and the legendary Colonel DeBeers. They were my trainers. And then I got to spend a lot of time with professional wrestling superstar, the Grappler, who
love that guy.
Yeah, he was the top star of the Northwest in the late 80s, early 90s. He was the booker of the territory, came out of the Bill Watts area. And his claim to fame was that he defeated the American Dream Dusty Rhodes and Andre the Giant in the New Orleans Superdome. It was, of course, by disqualification. But
we'll take it.
We'll take it. I've worked with in the ring with Finlay, Raven. I've booked several other large superstars like Chris Daniels. I've gotten to work with the Doink the Clown, Matt Borne, Roddy Piper. Trying to think of other names. I've worked with a lot of people. I've done some work with.
Didn't we yesterday discover that Wikipedia has you written down wrong for Texas All-Star Wrestling, that you apparently worked the show with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, but that didn't actually take place?
I was supposed to debut in Texas All-Star in 2004, in August of 2004, and Jim Duggan was on the show. Apparently, they didn't realize I wasn't on the show. He was the champ. Okay. He was the Texas All-Star champ, and I actually left the state of Texas in June to go back to Oregon to go train with Buddy and Colonel. So I was nowhere to be seen. I was gone 2 months before the show started. I was supposed to debut on that show, though.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I have no idea what the plans were, but you
were probably going to get a nice push. You had the look, you had the gimmick going on. So maybe introduce yourself a little bit more to my audience here, and kind of give us a background of how long has it been since you first started wrestling?
I started late. I started in 2000, and I started training in 2003. Well, actually, I had several failed attempts. In 1994, I gave some money to a local professional wrestler in Oregon, Billy Jack Haynes, who was a former WWF star.
Right, he was at WrestleMania 3.
He was. Oh yeah, he tells everybody that. And so I gave him a $500 deposit to train me. And he immediately took that money, went to the dog tracks, bet it, and it was gone. And so he owes me money. And then I when I was in Texas, I just found this wrestling school in the phone book. And if people don't know what phone books are, back in the day, there were these big giant books that had phone numbers in there. You couldn't use your cellular phone. You had to go into the old phone book. It was like a big dictionary or encyclopedia. And so I just found a wrestling school in there. And so I called this guy up, and this dude was a rube. He was carny as carny gets. His name was the Outlaw Josie Wales. And this guy was a goof. And so I went to his school, and the first day I went there, he gave me a 4-page script on a match that he wanted me to wrestle. It wasn't a script.
Oh, goodness.
And he put me in there with all of his guys. And there was a couple of guys that actually had potential. And one of them I became friends with And so this guy I realized was a goof, so I just kind of disappeared because I didn't know where else to go. And so then I was back in Oregon again, and I started training again, and I twisted my ankle at work. I twisted my ankle at work.
I'm familiar with that ankle.
And so I had to get out of that school because I couldn't walk. And then they thought that I was faking an injury or something. And I'm like, because they didn't see me get hurt in wrestling. They saw me, they just, he's
outside
not
of the ring.
Up.
Yeah,
he doesn't have the heart. And so then finally in 2003, I got myself in better shape. And then I went to All-Star Wrestling because I ran into a buddy of mine who was at the Rubes, Josie Wales school.
Right.
And he got me, he said, come on up to the school. So I went up there, and I was there with about 12 other guys that day. And only 2 people made it out of that first class, and that was me and another guy. And only one person made it to their true first match, me. The first day of class, there was probably about 10 or 12 older guys there, like veterans. And we got 3 chops and 3 forearms for each one of them. So that's 30 chops and 30 forearms. And we were able to chop each one of them once as well. Most of the guys after that, they had bloodied up chest, messed up ribs. I mean, their ribs weren't broken or nothing like that, but they were hurt, beat up, and they didn't come back on that. That was on a Tuesday, and I came back on Thursday for the next one. So
it's not a business for the weak. And this episode is called Works and Shoots and Works Shoots. Could you give us a definition of what is a work and what is a shoot, and where that term applies?
I would, but I'd have to kill you. Kayfabe, brother. No, but since we're diving into it, so a work is when you are working with each other, you give each other your body, because the ring is already going to kick your ass. You don't have to necessarily beat the hell out of your opponent. Like, I was taught early on that you could hit hard in the chest, you could hit hard in the back, you can even hit a little bit in the forehead. But like when you see people hitting like on the jaw, people think you're not getting hit, but you're opening your hand up and you're still getting slapped.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Actually, yeah. My first ever time working in the business, as you were familiar, was in ECCW up in Vancouver. And the first time we did a thing, I was Joel the fan, and came into the ring, and I got shoved. Nobody taught me how to bump, so I just kind of actually fell, and like you realize really quickly that the ring hurts. And then I got stomped, and I kind of got really stomped and rolled out of the ring. So I was like, that was realer than I was ready for. And then the next time I came back, I was to give a punch, and I was taught that whole thing about the kind of opened hand, and you want to have that little bit of space, and then it comes in, and I probably popped him with like at least 4 or 5 real punches by accident. And I mean, I had receipts coming later, and they did, but so we ended up actually just morphing it. I said, well, I can do a headbutt. Let's do a headbutt spot. And so, we did the headbutt instead, so as not to botch the punch. And a lot of people don't realize, like, a lot of wrestlers are graded on how good their punches are. I mean, if you got really bad punches, you're not going very far in the business. And so,
a lot of guys, like, if you punch really hard and really bad, then you're not. No one's going to want to work with you. No one's going to want to give you your body. And so then that's from like the work. The work is to make sure that you take care of your opponent. And now some people who may not understand that and might listen to this, or some people go, "Oh, so it's fake."
Nope.
Because here's the thing: is that we take care of our bodies because the ring is unforgiving. So
you can't fake gravity. You just can't fake gravity. Falling is falling. Yeah.
And so a shoot is what UFC is, and what boxing is that they're really grappling, and there's the difference between UFC and pro wrestling is the total difference between work and shoot. In a shoot in UFC, for example, in a shoot in UFC, you don't want to fall to the mat. If you're on the mat, you're prone. And so if you're on the mat, so the goal is when you're in a real fight is to not go to the mat. Well, the thing in professional wrestling is we want to land as hard on the mat as possible.
Correct.
That's where
and as flat as possible. That's
as
the other
flat
thing.
as possible. Don't fall in pieces. Don't fall on your butt. Don't fall on your lower spine because you're going to screw your back up, Joel. You know?
He's referencing the fact. Actually, I don't know if you still remember, but we had just gotten the Luchando ring, and it was just built that first day. And I remember looking, and you guys were all testing it out. You were all, taking your bumps. You were testing it out. You were all flopping, doing your bumps, landing flat. And as I'm watching it, I'm, because like there's this part of you, it's a manly thing. It's like, I can, if these guys can take the punishment, take the pain, suck it up, princess, go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched you guys all do it, and I'm watching you guys walk in and just fall on the back, fall on the back. And at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I'm the owner. I got to show them that I'm not willing to get, or I'm not unwilling to get my hands dirty. And so what did I do? I walked out in front of everybody and I flopped on the mat, thinking I was doing it right with no training whatsoever. Cracked the back of my skull. That as Stevie Richards says, that mat can bite you, and I got bit, and I felt it for a week. Because a lot of times people look at, I didn't know to tuck my head. I didn't know how to protect myself. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. So it actually took a while to learn how to fall properly, to bump properly. And I still, to this day, don't bump that great. But I've taken a couple of good ones. And it's funny because, I mentioned about, I got a receipt for those botched punches. That came that came at a later time. So a little bit more of our history together here. I met Sully in Vancouver, and I'll never forget it. So I used to go back behind the show, after the show, and meet with some of my friends who were other wrestlers.
There was an alley back there. There was an alley behind the building.
Yeah, behind the Russian Community Center. And I went back there, and I was so impressed. I was always a big fan of your work, huge fan of your work. And I was so impressed by a match you did with Sid Silem. And I didn't even realize, because Sid was like with me in the group, but I didn't even realize that I was standing next to him, because I was actually visiting with Scotty at the time. And so you're walking by, and I
went. I went on as far to the other side of the alley as possible, because I didn't know who you were, and you were standing next to my enemy.
That's right. And then I called out to you. I was like, "Great match, Sully." And then you told me to F myself.
I sure did. That was our first interaction.
Yep. And I remember I was so honored by that, because it was like, wow, yeah, he respects the business enough to take this seriously. And so it later on, so my third appearance, because we had a little trilogy of shows where I was doing the run-in things. And on my third appearance, I ended up getting super kicked in the back of the head, dragged to the middle of the ring. I took an elbow from the top rope, and then almost had another elbow while having a chair put around my neck and my face. And finally, it was carried out of the ring to the back. And I'll never forget it, man. I'll never forget it to this day. You came up to me, slapped me on the shoulder, and said, "The kick looks sick, bro." And that was it. I was in. And later on, we were able to reconnect some more, and got back and forth, talking lots about the business, asking you questions, and slowly but surely, I started to be crafting what would later become Luchando in Las Americas, and you are our very first champion that we brought down here. And I believe that that experience stuck with you so much so that that's the reason you're back down here now. You're back here in Paraguay. We're about 2 hours away from each other right now. But how's the transition been so far coming back down?
It's been pretty smooth, actually. It's really been no problems. Like fortunately, I have that experience of being here 8 years ago, and then the country itself has improved technology. The technology has improved so much. The infrastructure has improved enough to where You know, like they got Uber, they've got this thing called Bolt, so I can get around town no problem. I don't have to go hunt down a taxi like I used to.
Yeah, you don't have to give
You know,
directions in Spanish and all that kind of stuff.
no. And then um, the restaurants have improved. It's still, you know, you don't get the variety that you do back in the States, but it's a good trade off. You know, it's a much better trade off.
When the food is cleaner, you were finding, eh? You're finding the food is a little cleaner in terms of.
I'm not the only one who says that, though, because we have that high fructose corn syrup in the United States, which causes, it's just horrible for you. It's garbage, and anybody could just look it up and see. You know, I can't explain it very well. I'm not the kind of person that when I read things that I can retain and then explain, but I can read and go, okay, this is bad. That is good. And when someone asks me and they say, well, give me the details, I can't, because I can't retain it like that. When I read something and I look into it, I just go, okay, this is bad, this is good. or when they go, oh, if you don't like somebody or something, like a political figure or a celebrity, I just know this person's bad and that person's good. Give me details. Well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a news reporter. I'm just telling you what I read.
Well, you can. That's this. We always say this. A worker can spot a worker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, a clown can spot a clown.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I'd love to kind of pivot a little bit. We'll come back to we got a lot of wrestling to talk about today, but I want to pivot a little bit in terms of having the experience that you do have and knowing how to put a persona out there, put a gimmick out there, be working as a heel, which is the villain of wrestling, or working as a babyface, which is the good guy in wrestling. You start to really hone in on actual psychology, not just ring psychology, but actual psychology, learning what makes people happy, what makes people mad, how to get under their skin, how to convey something. This show's called High Trust, Low Context. And what's interesting about wrestling is it's actually a blend of high context and low context, because from a low context standpoint, you're coming out there, you got the mic, that's the promo, and you directly tell people you suck. I don't like this city. You guys, your team's garbage and blah, blah, blah. Get the cheap heat.
Yeah, there's no passive aggressiveness.
But the high context stuff is told during the match. It's the body language, it's the subtleties, it's the slowing things down, it's as little as a head nod, it's as little as an arm taking a little longer to fall down. It's so high context that people have to read it, and that's why I thought it was such a good thing to bring to another country, is because it's easy to translate wrestling into other languages. It's very easy. Just change the commentary team. There you go. It's done. But going back to like your experience, how does that translate to real life in terms of like when you're watching a politician, you're watching a celebrity, you're watching somebody putting putting themselves over, putting something else over, or when there's a lie or a truth being told? When
I was younger, and this is before I got into wrestling, I think I was fairly gullible. I think that I kind of would take people at face value. I believed in what everybody said. And I would, because for me, my thought was, well, I have no reason to lie, so why are they lying? And then as I got in, yes, yeah. I trust, and then as I got into professional wrestling, you begin to realize that, like, everybody in wrestling, especially back when I broke into it, everybody in wrestling, there was a lot of the old guys there, a lot of the new guys coming in, and you still were getting people who were taking it very seriously. People who were buying into kayfabe, because we were still very close to the kayfabe era when I broke in. We had.
Could you explain what kayfabe is? Just maybe some of the listeners don't know what kayfabe is.
Mm-hmm. So kayfabe,
define it.
Kayfabe is essentially where you keep all the information in pro wrestling within the wrestling community. You do not share that information with people who are outside the wrestling community. For the first probably 15 years of my career, I really didn't share what I was doing or the inside secrets.
There would be no interviews like this. It's like this wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I did a few, but they were mainly for like the people who are already the smarks. Where
Right.
this here, we're getting more, like your listeners come from different backgrounds. It's not only pro wrestling, but it's also from some of your other interests. And so
Hmm.
this is kind of like a blended community here.
It's a hybrid.
And
Yeah.
yeah, hybrid. There you go. And so with kayfabe, it was just inclusive to the wrestlers. And and the thing is that the slogan that has come out in the last few years is everybody belongs. And I know why they use everybody belongs, but it's been bastardized. And what I mean bastardized is they go, well, everybody thinks that they can be a wrestler now. And I take it literally, not figuratively. I'm a very literal person, because I want to eliminate that.
Hmm.
And my thing is that not everybody does belong in my locker room. Not everybody does belong in my sanctity. If you now, do you want to enjoy wrestling? Absolutely. For the actual viewing and art of professional wrestling, everybody belongs to watch it, enjoy it. But the thing is that now everybody wants to be backstage. And I go, oh, you're small. You can be a referee. No, I want to be a wrestler. But you have no muscle tone. But I can kick out of Canadian Destroyer.
Yeah. Well, what did we say before? It's like, that we won't mention the name of the wrestler, but it's like you're watching this wrestler and you're going, dude, that guy looks like a barista. Like he looks like a barista to me. That's somebody who served me an espresso a couple of weeks ago, and I walked into the wrong cafe,
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is that you have to earn the respect. You talked about when you were doing training, you're taking all these chops and you're taking all those kind of things. I'll never forget, like when we ran tryouts for Luchando, and you're watching this group slowly dwindle over the course of a day, just like people walking out, or just they were done. And it's not for the weak. It is not for the weak. And you guys have a very good system of weeding out the weak. And
we used to. It's a
less
little
so
bit different
now.
now. But let me go now. So let me backtrack though. So
Sure.
how does that operate into how I can read politicians and people in life? So as I was in wrestling, the longer I got into wrestling, I began to learn how to read people better. And a lot of the things that comes up from my childhood, because there was a lot of shady family members and friends of family that a lot of the wrestlers reminded me of. And I always got like these bad vibes, but I didn't know. I wasn't able to just go, you know what? I don't want this person in my life. And so now when I get a red flag, when I see someone and I have red flags about them, I know it right away. There's something wrong with this person. There's something up with this person. And this person has red flags all over them. And, I hate to say it, but I'm usually about 90 to 95% right. Like that will come true. Like, oh, this person got busted for this, or this person put their hand in the cookie jar, or this person was talking to someone that they shouldn't have been talking to.
Right.
And those are red flags. And it's the same thing like with most politicians, is where you can kind of tell, with politicians, about who's the red flags ones. And I'll tell you the truth, once you get up to the higher state governments and then to the national governments, you're already there.
They wouldn't let you in otherwise.
Yeah, you're not going to be on CNN. You're not going to be on Fox News. You're not going to be on and trust me, when people go, well, I'm a CNN guy, I'm a Fox News guy, they're both bad. They're both bad. There's no good guy.
And that's the thing too, is the hard part is I get accused a lot of times of what's called purity spiraling. And that's where, I'll catch a politician. I'll be like, well, they said this and that was a lie. And, even though he's on quote unquote my team, like, how can we trust this guy if he's willing to lie about this one thing and not about this other thing? Or it starts to get to you at a certain point where you start to realize it's very difficult to trust anybody in this world.
Well,
and go ahead.
There's a thing too now where I think who's that Russell Brand that got caught for doing some stuff. I don't remember all the details, but
the allegations are out there. Yeah,
the allegation. And so the people who because Russell Brand used to be a fan of, or the people used to love him that were leftists, and now he's kind of he's playing to the right. He's kind of doing what Bill Maher's doing. But the thing is, he
Jeff
gets caught
Rubin
doing
is another.
something. Yeah, there you go.
Tim
and the people that hate the rights and hate them, they're just like, oh, that guy's a piece of garbage. But the thing is that, well, but if someone on your team says anything or does anything wrong, you ignore that.
Right.
You know, and so when I see people go after somebody, and he had rightfully so, go after him, go ahead, that's fine. He's a piece of garbage as it is. But when I try to correct that, go, why don't you go after your people? Then they're just like, oh, what are you, a Nazi, a fascist? Are you, you know, whatever? I'm like, no, I'm just calling you out on your bull. You know, I'm just calling you out on your BS. So, you know,
yeah,
it's like,
I've heard it. Don't punch down, or don't punch right, don't punch left. You know, it's like I'm gonna punch wherever a punch is deserved. Like you.
Well, yeah, well, and when people try to tell me what to do, I'm just like, go piss off. You know, like until you pay my bills. You know, it's like you know, I don't drink as much as I used to, and I remember I was only having 1 or 2 beers a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago when I first got back, and one of the guys jokingly said, like, "What kind of man are you?" And I go, "I'm the type of man that doesn't have to listen to another man tell me what to do." You know,
bingo. You found the right place for it. Yeah, Paraguay's a good place for that. It's funny because we've talked about this before. There's another thing that happens, especially with people seeking clout or high positions of power. It tends to attract a lot of people with
issues,
emotional disorders, issues. Yeah. You get a lot of sociopaths, narcissists, psychopaths even. And it's funny because when I came into wrestling, I remember somebody sat down with it was Natch. It was Natch who said to me, he said wrestling, because I was coming actually from, I did amateur stand-up comedy for a while. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really bugged me about going into that was, you know, I'm meeting with these guys, I'm hanging out with them afterwards, we're going out afterwards. And these ended up being the most miserable people I've ever encountered. Like, they are just spiteful and resentful and angry. And it was across the board. I couldn't find a single normal dude that like was worth hanging out with afterwards. Everybody was cutthroat. Everybody was just burying each other. Like, a second you were behind each other's back, they were just like burying each other. It was very similar. Yeah. And I realized that really quickly when I came into wrestling, but it was Natch who said that basically wrestling has a lot of similarities with stand-up comedy, especially because of the promos.
Yeah.
But it also had a lot of in common with strippers, with stripping. And
I come from the strip club industry. No, I didn't strip, by the way.
You were a bouncer back in the day?
I was a bouncer. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so the thing is that with I mean, we can flush that out. A lot of that has to do with body, you know, like body movement, body work, presentation. I mean, a lot of them come out. You think about it. When a stripper comes out on stage, what's she doing? Usually she comes out with like a Ric Flair robe or some sort of gimmick, and she will have her own music that she's tied to. I mean, one of the things that's really important with wrestling is that entrance, is that first exposure, the first impression you're giving to people. And
I'm more interested now in the presentation of the entrance and the music and how they present themselves in the actual matches, because I've seen so many matches. I'm fooled. Like, you know, so show me how you present yourself and show me how you tell a story. Okay, please continue.
Well, no, and that's the thing is that a lot of times these people come out and they have a persona, a gimmick, and you can start to see it in politics. You can start to see it in even like when Kanye was doing his wild tour, late last year. You think to yourself, like, a lot of this is a put on. A lot of this is he knows what he's going to do, and he's going to come out there and he's going to get attention, and he's going to go boom. He's going to get his cheap heat. Right. And he's going to get his point across. He's going to get his cheap heat. And sure enough, yeah. I mean, he got headlines. He got all the stuff he wanted to talk about out there. But then you're looking at it, you're going, well, it's couched in something. You know, it's how you're presenting it. What is the message you're trying to get out there? One of the things that it's always gotten me with wrestling is when we get told, like, because I've cut a lot of promos in wrestling, and I get told ahead of time, okay, you've got about 30 seconds. You've got, this much time on the mat, or it's like, stretch it out. We need you to stretch it out, go long, take this as long as you want, take as long as you need. And sometimes the shorter ones are even harder than the longer ones, because you have to come out there and get something really succinct and poignant and boom, get your point across and move on. But with when I'm watching a newscaster, when I'm seeing how they present the news, and you can see them start to thread a narrative in, and we do this in wrestling. We do this in wrestling booking. You know, we're going to set up this guy for a heel turn, and it's going to take about 4 or 5 matches or 4 or 5 episodes before we get there. We're going to start planting the seeds now. And we're going to start boom, boom, boom. Okay, we're going to hit the beats, and then he's going to do this, and he's going to maybe shove his partner, and he's going to you know, get cheated out of something, and he's going to react a little bit poorly, but we can relate to him. But you're going to, you know, you start to see that in real life. You start to see the way that they seed those things. It's like, you know, we got the election coming up in 2024. So all of a sudden you're starting to see more of RFK Jr. and you're starting to see more of Donald Trump versus Ron DeSantis. And you're seeing all these little wrestling narratives going on.
DeSantis is already out. DeSantis is done.
He's pretty much done. Yeah.
But he's
but
already
the
been
fact
very,
that we thought he was
his own has already started to eat him.
And but the fact that we even thought he was in for a while was pro wrestling. Do you know what I mean? Like that was just building it up, and that was the pro wrestling aspect. And one of the things that I also noticed when we were working together, one of the things that, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, and it's not across the board, but it's something I noticed the most, was it seemed to me that the people who come out of the curtain and are baby faces have a very different persona often behind the curtain in the back room, in the locker, because there's this need for adulation, this need for the esteem, the love thing. Yeah, you gotta love me. And so and then the hard part is that they turn around and then they go back through that curtain. And for a lot of them, they're getting back into their Hyundai accent and driving home a long way. And it's a hard reality crash, because you're just out there. You're a small G god, and you're a hero. And then you got to make this long drive back and wonder if I got enough of my trans pay to cover my gas all the way home or that.
And a lot of these guys, like they don't have, like when I was breaking into pro wrestling, a lot of the trainees and wrestlers, they didn't have jobs. Like they lived, they were living off of people and like couch surfing, and it was they say they were doing it for pro wrestling. No, they weren't doing it for pro wrestling. It's because they were lazy. I had a dual life when I was a wrestler. I had a very stable job. I've always had stable jobs for the most part. Mm-hmm. And I was always working. I was creating my own business. But it was a duality. I was two people. I was Jason Sullivan, and then I was Jason. I ain't giving you my last name, people. And
yeah, don't dox yourself. Not on here.
No. And so I had a duality, and Jason Sullivan did take over. I identify and feel more like Sully than I do as Jason, mm-hmm. as my slave name. So, I feel more comfortable as Sully. I never felt like comfortable in my own skin until I was Sully. And there's the thing though, is as my career had started to slow down, I had some issues because I couldn't find my place in the world, and I was having a hard time finding my place in the world. Where do I belong? Because I had some issues beforehand, even though I was doing fine business wise and stuff like that. But then when I became Sully, I found myself and I became comfortable within my own skin. And then as I got out of the business, that rush, that chasing the dragon, that drug, it wasn't there as much, and I needed that. And I've gotten more comfortable within my life now in the last couple of years. But man, I've slowed down my career in the last 6 years. I used to wrestle every weekend. I was probably doing between 80 to 100 matches a year, and then I think the last few years I might do 10 or 20. So, and this year I've done 3 or 4. So
wow. So But maybe update our listeners. So you are down here in Paraguay, and you've given us the time to be able to chat because you do have work that you are doing steady. But one of the other projects that you're working on is you've brought back wrestling here to Paraguay again, and with the ring, you're now running a pro wrestling school down here. To tell us a little bit about how that's going.
It's going good. We've got about 7 to 8 students right now. Now I get contacted all the time. I've had probably over 30, minimum of 30 contacts, but I think 3 of them have showed up. And so it's what I call the dreamer. They're in dreamer mode right now, and whenever I hear someone say, "Oh, this is my dream," I'm like, I don't give a damn about your dream. Do it. Like, stop dreaming. You have goals. Goals are great, but when I hear the word I always hear is, "I'm going to do this" or "I'm going to do that," I don't pay attention to that. You're just talking into the air. I'm going to win the lottery. Well,
it requires a certain level of humility, if you're coming in, because everybody dreams about being the toughest guy. They're really there to want those big pops, those big cheers, and they want that adulation, they want that importance. But you have to start at the bottom. You have to, not everybody breaks into the business like Kurt Angle or Brock Lesnar. Most people have to start at the very bottom and work their way up.
I was an exception, but I also was very lucky because when I came in I had my first match in 2005. I actually was turning down promotions because I didn't want to get pigeonholed. There was promotions that they had some guys that were working there that I'm like, I don't want to be in a locker room with these people. And some people will go, "Oh, you've got a big ego." And it's like, there's a difference between having bigger goals and being humble. And I had bigger goals. I would say
some level of discernment is involved.
Yeah.
Too,
That's one of
the things that I respect about you is that you seem to discern things very, very well. You have a very good vision. Ahead of time.
I try. And I had it for myself, where now I have it for Paraguayan wrestling, and I had it for wrestling in the United States and in Canada, and now I have it for myself. Now I had it for myself though back in the day, and I remember I was in a car ride with one of the students, and he had been working for a few years at that plant, and he goes, "So like, what are your goals?" And I said flat out, "My goal is to be the top guy in the Northwest," and he was kind of shocked that I just said that, just bluntly, "Oh, I just figured you would be happy, your goal is to be on the shows," because I hadn't been on the shows yet, and
you were grabbing that brass ring, man, right off the bat. I
wasn't trying to get a WWE contract. I wasn't trying to get, Japan would have been cool.
How come?
They weren't going after my body type at that time. There was a time in
is that like Ruthless Aggression era? Yeah. Would you say?
Yeah, they wanted Randy Orton was the carbon copy that they wanted, and they were not looking at anybody above 30. I was already 31. I was 340 pounds. The funny thing is I'm 49 now, and I work out 5 days a week. Back then I didn't work out. I just relied on my athleticism and my size.
Right.
And I could move I moved like a cat at that time, and they weren't looking for somebody like me. And even when I had my tryout, they weren't impressed with my moves. They were blah, 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 blah. But they said, get in the gym, lose weight, put on muscle. And I didn't. And I should have. Because when they started looking for bigger guys, like the Bray Wyatts, like the Viking Warriors, there was a few other guys that were part of some other groups that were bigger boys that were my size.
Otis, Keith Lee?
Yeah, but this was even before them. This was like in 2017, 2018. I was already 40 years old.
Yeah.
They were getting, so the time for me to get signed, I should have signed up. I should have started wrestling when I was 18, so I could have had an opportunity, because I probably could have gotten booked by WWE or F at the time, or ECW. Japan would have been a very viable option for me. Easily,
especially given the fact that they love, because you are what we call a monster wrestler. Right. Yeah. Like that's, and it's in your name, but I mean, there's there's different tiers of different types of wrestlers or different body types, and you're you would call a monster, right? Or monster, yeah. And maybe okay, go ahead.
Well, and so the reason why I never wanted to join the WWE, WWF is because I didn't think it was there for me. So my goal was what I considered what was there for me, and it was to be the top guy in the Northwest, and I did achieve it. I actually, I helped rebuild the Northwest from the dead zone because, everybody was looking to the past. I was trying to look more towards the future. And I had a lot of hiccups and I had a lot of bumps because I was booking shows 3 years into the business, 2 years into the business, 2 years into the business, And everybody says, well, go get a vet. Well, my problem was, and my retort was, because they go, how dare you book because you're this young guy? And my reply was always, well, we went to the vets and they just scammed the promoters for money. So
that checks out.
you had your shot. You had your shot, man. We lost Joel, so I'm taking over right now. We lost Hot Chaco. I'm taking over. This is the Jason Sullivan show now. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this rolling until he comes back. And so I hope everybody out here is having a good time. And so I hope you guys are enjoying this conversation right now. And so if you guys are ever looking to get into pro wrestling or anything in the entertainment business, then please, do your due diligence, go get trained, and make sure you do go about it the right way, because it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult.
Sorry about that.
So,
all right, there we go.
I've just been rambling since
you're a pro, man. You're a pro. I trust you for all that.
I was like, well, I hope he comes back because I
don't trust my internet sometimes out here, man. I ended up taking this thing and now we're running it off my phone. But yeah, it just all of a sudden just died, just gone. So,
well, shout out the hotspot.
Yeah, I'm gonna get them to take that off my bill because that's not cool. No. But so going back to your story, then you booked it well, and when you were down here, we put you you were on the booking team. You were definitely heavily involved with the booking team, and one of the things that I appreciated about you the most is you're like an encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge. You've got this. You can quickly draw upon some narrative, some storyline that was done in the late 80s, early 90s, why it worked, why it didn't work, how it would work with our guy, what we're going to do with it. How much would you say our conversations go towards booking? I mean, even though the show hasn't been on since 2015, I think you and I probably spent at least 30% of our time talking about booking.
Minimum.
Yeah.
And that's I think there was a several year stretch where that's kind of it was our own therapy afterwards because, there was so many, we could have done this, we could have done that. And for you, I know it was a stressful time, doing that. And I think that maybe at some point down the road, we could actually have a special show just to cover that, that would be.
Oh, probably. Yeah. Do a Luchando, in retrospect, thing would be kind of a fun thing, and we could show clips and stuff.
Mm-hmm. That could be a several part series because that was pretty. We could, and I think it'd be kind of cool to get other people from there as well. Like Michael or whatnot. To get their opinions, because everybody has such. Yeah, they have different.
I've reached out to Spinelli. I always reach out to Scotty, but he's very hit and miss in terms of responding because I think we use different platforms mostly. But I know he would want to talk about it. Drexel would be a good one to bring back on to talk about it. Heck, I'd even bring back on Lazarus, man. I would, I'd bring anybody back on to chat about it because it was quite an experience.
It really was, and. It'd be kind of cool to do a Brady Bunch show where you get everybody on there, I
think I can do up to 10 or 12 of them on here. So, yeah.
That would be amazing.
A bunch of mics. Yeah.
It would be like a therapy session.
Which we still do that a lot. A lot of hindsight is 2020 booking. But at the same time, I still take pride in what we did. I think that it was one of the most magical experiences in my life. And it wouldn't have been that way if I had the different people. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you and I, we hit it off right off the bat. You were the one who talked me into being a manager. Do you remember how that went?
Let me, and then you could guide me along this one. I remember correctly, you had a local manager down here.
Yeah, an Argentinian guy. Yeah,
Argentinian guy. But I think you didn't trust him, or something happened.
He was running his mouth.
There you go.
It was basically, we had this guy lined up. He had played. He had done a lot of work as a heel ref, and he went into business for himself a lot. And I would watch the shows, and he would be a detriment to the shows because he was the only ref they had. And so every single match was just him helping the heel and like hindering the babyface. And it just got real tiresome, but he had some chops. I mean, he could get heat. And I thought, well, maybe I could use that guy. And I came up with the name Don Chaco because there's a name. Well, actually, no, Don Chaco came up. That was through my own thing. Cause I took my last name and I switched out some letters and chose a name of an area in Paraguay where there's actually a bunch of expats living. But we had him as a Don something, because Don means sir, and in Spanish, so like Don Juan, right? And they had there's a really, really popular show down here called El Chavo del Ocho from Mexico. And one of the most popular characters on El Chavo del Ocho was a character named Don Ramon. And so, and one of our top investors was named Don. And I thought as a way to kind of parlay that, I wanted to use that name. But this guy ran his mouth and he said, you know, they're bringing in all these guys from up north. They don't know anything about this place. We know better. We should be the ones running it. They should just invest in us and do it that way. And he was running his mouth. And then finally I was like, nah, we'll just. And so I came to you and I said, yeah, we're going to run casting for like a new gimmick for this heel manager and take it from there.
And I just said, what about you? That's all I said was just, what about you? And you were just like, I'm not a manager. My Spanish is poor. And I went, that's perfect.
And it worked out great. It did work out great. I did not see it coming. I did do the little bit of work in Vancouver, which you had seen before that, but I thought I sucked. So I thought, okay, I'll just, I'll take a back seat, but it turned out okay. Actually, I think
one of my main things was chemistry. We had started to develop a fairly pretty good chemistry at that point. And so I was, when you get put with somebody and with this guy, the other person that ran his mouth, I was concerned about chemistry because we didn't speak the same language. And I like to be able to communicate with my partner out there, my manager, my comrade, whatever you want to call it. And so
representante legal.
And for it to work properly is I need someone that I can communicate with. And so the fact that you spoke poor Spanish, and this was in October of that year. This is about 4 or 5 months before we were due to come down and start shooting officially. And so I'm like, okay, he's going to learn more Spanish to get him passable. And you said you were passable at Spanish, but it was horrible. And I thought that would have been hilarious. We had this gringo coming down there, and then you kind of came up with the gimmick of where you were this expat that came from nowhere, and like you claimed to be from nowhere. And it was. I
would change the subject. I would say, I'm Paraguayan. I've got the documents.
And as I came down here and we went to an expat meeting, which was before the show even started, we were probably about a week or two out. There was an expat dinner, which is the one and only that I ever went to. I saw a lot of Don Chacos there.
Yep. I had a lot of material to draw from. That's for sure.
And I never went to another one. Yeah, I never went to another one because I think we're all running from something or running to something. But these guys, man, were the worst of the worst. There was a couple of cool ones. Yeah.
Yep.
But the rest of them were just like they probably would have been in jail if they were in the United States for
Totally.
a lot of
they were running from something
to sexual deviancy to whatever. Like these guys were they were all Don Chacos. So
well, it worked out well too, because the thing is that it's very clear. Like, this is a country that doesn't have, generally speaking, they don't have that many expats down here. They do, but they don't. And
there's a lot more now than
a lot of
before.
Paraguayans will go their entire life never meeting one.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm at, like, I'm the only Canadian for at least an hour and a half each way. There's no other Canadians out here. So they just like, what's that?
Wasn't there a Swiss guy out there though that got popped?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
Not that far from us. Yeah, yeah. But the thing is like it's easy to play into it, because the thing is too, while I would see those bad the bad expat behaviors, I knew what was off-putting about them. Because what was off-putting about them to me was everybody wanted to start a business. They wanted to invest. They wanted to take advantage. And so if I could take this guy and make him a 100% with the goal of being important, that was the one thing. He wanted to be important. He wanted to be respected by the. But and that's actually why it works so well as a heel, because at the end of the day, I didn't even want to do the job. That wasn't my goal from the beginning. I wanted to sit in the stands and watch my product, but it worked over time. And, it was great, because you'd be going out there and cutting these scathing promos in English. And then I would come back and translate it into Spanish, and I would tidy it up and make it all clean, and the people would just be booing, because there's a lot of the people in the audience that could understand English, and they're like, "That's not what he said." And it was such a perfect chemistry.
Do you remember, because of my promos though? Do you remember the studio head came to us, or came to you more specifically, and said that I need to tone it down because they're afraid that I'm going to get killed? And I was like, no.
There was a lot of that pushback for sure. And it was funny too, because I don't know, did you ever get attacked by any of the fans at any of the things? Did you ever get
I had some push me. I had some try to come after me, but they never got to it. Like, they would threaten. And the thing is though, is that they would yell a good game, but then the second that I would come towards them, they wouldn't say, yeah. And I was encouraging it though. I wanted someone to attack me.
You were going for some pretty good hate.
I wasn't sitting there trying to say, I wasn't sitting there just running my mouth. I was hoping someone would attack me. Like,
yeah. Well, you got that later at a bar when the camera wasn't on. But
two bars. There's actually, you don't know about all of them. I was with Max on another one. That was a pretty good one.
Interesting. Yeah, I got more. I got, people trying to steal my hat, trying to steal my glasses. And the problem with when somebody comes grabbing for your glasses is that you get like fingernails and stuff right near your eye, and so I actually got hurt. I ended up scraping my cornea when somebody took scraped my glasses off of me. I would actually hang out on the VIP side because it was a little bit more subtle, and I could then choose to go out and yell at the crowd and then safely walk back. It was the best way to go about it. And
the VIP people also were a little bit more like of a higher, I guess they were viewed as higher class people in the area.
They were celebrities we would bring in. Yeah. So we would bring in these celebrities. And so for them to do something like that would cause headlines, maybe that they don't want, so some of them might have wanted it. Some of them loved that idea. Some of them,
there was a couple I'm sure that would have had no problem.
But it's funny because some of the listeners here know that I worked in midget wrestling, And when I was working with the Midget Wrestling Warriors, we did a show in Medicine Hat, Alberta. And it was a big show. I mean, huge draw. Midget wrestling draws. It draws so many more than like what I was used to.
And before anybody gets mad at him using the word midget, it's in the name of the company. Yeah, Midget Wrestling Warriors. It was literally their name. Yeah. It's like, and like Short Sleeve Samson comes out and he's like, it's midget time, you know, like, so it's what are you going to do? So, you know, I'm 6 feet tall and getting chased around the ring by, you know, Short Sleeve Samson, who, you know, 4 feet if he's lucky. And I'm running around the ring and there's lots of times where I get attacked by fans because it's just, that's part of the business. And we were running around the ring and I'm getting chased because there's nothing funnier than a 6 foot tall man getting chased by a midget wrestler. And I got a lady who threw a drink on me, and you'd think, because that wasn't my first time I've had a drink thrown on me. I get drinks thrown on me all the time, but you'd think that should be an ejection, right? You'd think, but because it was a lady, not at a bar show, not well, this one wasn't a bar show. This was actually at a big, large cultural center, but you'd think that would get some sort of an ejection or something to take care of us. But because we were traveling from town to town, some of the times these security guys didn't really realize like what was or wasn't part of the show. You know, they were just there for a night's work. So this lady got to stay in, and then later in the show, I'm getting chased around, and she stuck her foot out and tripped me because it was dark. We had the lighting trees that were pointed at the ring. Yeah, no, not trusses. Like they were on long poles. So they were just those ones, like there's a lot of shadowing there.
Oh yeah. And so she hits me with this foot out, sticks a foot out. Same lady. I go flying and I come inches away from hitting that light pole, which would have fallen back and would have taken out a bunch of people in the crowd. Like we would have been in the newspaper, easy. And, you know, she still didn't get tossed out. And so I just knew afterwards, like, stay away from that area. The drunk lady is going to get someone killed. But that's what comes back to the point here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up. I lost all my pre-settings, but I'm going to see if I can put them back in while we're here and show a couple of clips of, you know, when wrestlers stick up for themselves in terms of
interaction,
not even fan interaction, more so with like nosy journalists and stuff. Here we go.
Don't know what I'm talking about. We had a very ugly incident here last week on the show. Hulk Hogan and Ms. T were here, and
funny guy.
Hulk Hogan did a demonstration, and he hurt me real bad. I split my head open, and I was knocked unconscious, and so on. So just to show that I'm not a part of their promotional tool, and that this was real, I want you to take a look at this clip, and keep in mind this was real. Take a look at it, and remember, I had no idea what was about to happen. And I'll be right back.
Now, the first thing you need to know about amateur wrestling or professional wrestling or submission holds, you just tell me, brother, when you want him to quit squealing, okay?
All right.
That's the bone right there, man.
How about it, T?
Keep him like that for a little while.
Oh, he's out.
Because he's all right. He's just sleeping. He's sleeping. Really, I was a sleeper hole. He'll be all right. He's waking up now. That was a serious hole. A lot of people...
Watch this guy, professional.
See, it works. All right, brother.
And now, we'll be right back after this word from you-know-who. We'll be right back.
You see the blood on the back?
He shows it later.
I had no idea. When I got up and said, we'll be right back, I had no idea where I was. I was in shock. And I know I'm doing this a little bit, maybe going too far, but can we get a close-up of these stitches? Because I saw Bill Cosby today, and he thought it was a hoax. And if he thought, can we read that? Can you see that? Can you see those stitches? I'm sorry to do that to you. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to to show you. And this is not the first incident between a professional wrestler and a television interviewer. Watch what happened to ABC's 2020 reporter John Stossel.
Maybe fake violence.
I actually showed in the intro, I showed the John Stossel, Dave Schultz.
That's an open hand slap.
That's an open hand slap. How do you hit him like 2-3 times? This is another one.
I laugh every time I see that. Like, not the belts are one. My only issue with that is like the guy was out. Like Hulk could have at least helped bring him down a little bit.
Yeah, he didn't. He just kind of let him flop, and it wasn't taking care of him. But that's the one thing that's interesting is that like once you at the beginning of the show you were talking about working with somebody's body, like you're throwing you're offering your body up there, and you're taking care of one another. Well, see, a wrestler scorned, he's a little less incentivized to take good care of you if you're being a total, jerk. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
go ahead.
If someone pops off on me or is reckless on me, then I'm just going to eat them up. I'm not going to give you if you hit me once, it's okay. But if you hit me like 2 or 3 times, and I'm talking like I could take some shots, but if you're hitting me recklessly and you just you can't settle your feet down or whatever, then I'm going to gobble you up and I'm not going to give you anything.
No, exactly. Give some receipts. Now, I've got another clip lined up. I'm just going to upload this one real quick. This is one that you brought to my attention, and I think it's from the late 90s, early 2000s, maybe.
Well, I'm curious.
Wrestling, and they are in on the joke. That's not an insult.
So what you're trying to say is people are just dying for this.
I take it as an insult, too.
I do, too. But they're dying to find out, hey, wrestling's fake. No,
then you're telling me that you're really hitting each other?
No.
Look at that smug look on his face, by the way. Just like
he's such a prick.
I can't stand Bill Maher, and there's a running thread between these two hosts. But
the sound of the chair is real. Okay, we are entertainment, but when a metal chair cracks your back, that's not fake.
Somebody throws you from.
It's a metal.
Yes, you know what?
There's never.
That's the other thing is that you've taken a chair shot or two in your time. They never feel good, right?
They suck.
Have you done the tacks yet?
I've done tacks, barbed wire, glass.
Oof. All right, let's see what Roddy says here. Roddy is was a good Canadian boy, but he is a binding figure between you and I because he was a big deal in Portland when you were growing up.
Roddy.
So let's
love Mr. Piper.
Bruise on any of you.
Bologna, you got a minute? Look at that. No.
Metal hip. Broken wrist. See that wrist? 7 years it's been broken. Owen Hart, dead. Why don't you go tell Mrs. Hart what a joke it is, huh? Oh, it's just a phrase, right? You want me to be truthful with you? Huh, champ? You know what?
Let's pause it there for a second. Yeah, the thing about Roddy was he was a very passionate person. When we talked about works and shoots, he worked workers. That's his history. He's ripped some people off in the past, and he's taken people for a ride. But at the end of the day, boy, did he try his best to protect the business and other workers. And there's lots of interviews that he's given where he does take a huge offense to anybody who is making these accusations that it's super fake. That guy, he came into the business the hard way. Nobody trained him. He just would get paid to get his ass kicked for night after night after night.
He was trained by Condello, but that was still the hard way. And the thing is that the fake word bothers me because it's like, okay, so I've had over a dozen concussions, so that's fake. My knee is jacked up, that's fake. My right shoulder, I can't. This is as far as I go. This here is great. By the way, my right shoulder, that happened in a match 15 years ago. I refused to get surgery because I don't want to stop working out because I've lost a lot of weight and I don't want to lose my progression. I you know, my back pain, my neck pain. You know, like people go, oh well, you know, the ring has a spring in it, and I'm going to give you a little secret, and I'm going to kind of steal from Roddy. You know, the ring has a spring in it, so it doesn't bottom out. That's why a ring has a spring in it. Oh, the ropes are nice and soft. And then I always go, okay, I was 400 and I was almost 500 pounds. If the ropes are so soft, how come I was able to climb on them without the ropes bottoming out?
No kidding. No kidding.
You know, how was I able to stand in the ring at 500? And actually, my highest weight was 550. How was I able to stand in the ring and run around the ring and bump in the ring without the ring bottoming out?
Why don't you come a little closer to the camera too and show your forehead to anybody who's watching this? I mean, you've got how many scars up there from?
I've got bleeding? A ton of scars here from bleeding. I've got a big one up here from Drexel's cane when he was my manager. I can't really see it because you know, I've got hair in the way, but I have this scar line that's about this long.
I never hurt you as a manager.
No, I mean, he laid it in, and that's just, you know, that's what happened was.
Yeah,
he put his, I'll give away a secret. He put his fist in front of he had a big heavy metal cane. Well, he had his wedding ring on, and his wedding ring. So if you see his wedding ring, there's a track line of his wedding ring that's in my head. And I just look at it I look at it as a badge of honor. I look at it as, you know, I look at it as a war wound. I've got scars right here. This right here is from barbed wire 13 years ago. Slit my wrist open when I hit a splash. There was a barbed wire on the top rope. It was spitting blood out, but I didn't feel it during the match. Did I go get stitches? No. Fortunately, a friend's wife was in the back, and she had super glue. So I just super glued it shut, and I wrapped it, and I never got stitches. And when I blew my knee out in a match that took me out for 8 months. I couldn't wrestle for 8 months. Here's where the toughness part comes in, though. I was at work the next day. I was at work 12 hours later. And by the way, I didn't have a desk job. I was a delivery driver. So I had my knee wrapped. I had my knee wrapped. I had one of those $100 braces. And then thank God a friend of mine had one of those $1,500 metal braces that could lock my knee in place.
Like a Steve Austin one. Yeah.
And that there allowed me to go to work. Now, it took me longer to complete my jobs. I was delivering printing supplies at the time. So I mean, you're talking about getting into the forklifts, and I had to still operate. Imagine doing that with your legs straight.
And you, I brought up about the ankle. I made a little quip earlier because we were about to work we haven't worked together in the ring since late 2015, or was it early 2016? It was important.
No, late 2015. That was not my ankle. That was my groin.
Okay, groin. Okay, it was a groin injury. That's right, because you slipped getting into your car or something like that, right?
I slipped. It was a rainy night in Houston. I got out of my car. There was a rock because there was another car parked in the driveway that was parked very close over. So when I got out, I had to get out almost in the mud / rocks. And when I got out of my car, whatever it was with the mud or whatever, I got out, my leg slipped, and I pulled my groin.
Well, and the thing is that you brought up earlier about chemistry. And while I knew the guys that I was set to work with, I had never worked with them as a manager up until that point. So the chemistry wasn't there. And I had to learn it all in pretty much in front of 800-900 people, pressing 1,000 people. That was not easy. And one of these days we will work again together. But that last time that we worked together is the one and only time. This is my badge of honor for me. Is somebody passed along to PWI, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, about that match, and so there's a Pro Wrestling Illustrated issue where both of us are mentioned, and I got my name into one of my favorite wrestling publications of all time.
Yeah.
So that was really good. And so it's interesting. I'm actually gonna go and play the rest of this Roddy clip here because again, I really like the way he put Bill Maher in his place for being a smug jerk. So let's just see where this goes.
If I may say so, sir, The difference is...
What? Just
he's going to strike.
He's working. Here we go. He's working.
No. Just don't show me your ass again.
Listen, I ain't backstage, man.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not dropping my pants in front of other men, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, how'd you get the job?
Dude, that's classic. I love that line. Let's see here. Let's get back. Yeah, that's it. I had another Roddy Piper video queued up from his Portland days, but it's like 4 or 5 minutes long where he's ripping a writer from the Oregonian. That
is one of the greatest promos of all time. As a kid, I watched that live as an 8-year-old kid, not there, but on television. And that when I found that you should play it, to be honest, because it's amazing. I don't know if you've got it.
I've got it. I can get it, but I mean, maybe what I'll do is I'll close the show with it, and we'll let people see it at the end there because it's a doozy. It's a real doozy.
Yeah, and this is when Piper was already a national star on WTBS at that point. He was coming into Portland to face Ric Flair. He wanted to have the match in his hometown, and he came in to face Ric Flair in the Expo Center. The sports arena sat 2,000 people. They rented out the Expo Center, which sat 5,000 people. They probably could have went to the Coliseum and sold that out at 12,000 people.
That's how big it was in Portland at the time.
Yeah, the time in Portland, they used to run two Tuesdays a month and 4 Saturdays just in one building that sat 2,000 people. More than likely than not, they probably had a minimum of 12 to 1,500 people for each show. Sellouts were not uncommon up until about 85, 86. And then around 85, 86, they would pull in, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200, 1,300, something like that.
All right, you know what? Because you're telling me that story, I think we need to go into it. Yeah, I think I got to play it while we're on here.
I mean, it's part of my history.
I got a few things to say that we had all kinds of people come out and all kinds of support, and I'd like to say something because sometimes people don't have enough guts to say something back, or sometimes you don't have the
Babyface at this time?
I do, you see.
Absolutely,
what I'm looking at is an Oregonian
top guy of all time.
Newspaper here, you see. And I'm listening to this reporter here, Mr. Steve Dillon, who really thinks he's big time here.
Was he a big guy?
About Zelma Limberman, a little 82-year-old woman, and he says, all these people, including you, he says, are a strange mix of people you never see shopping at Washington Square. He says, you never see them driving fancy sporty cars. They says here, the cars they drive are vintage American models with foreign upholstery and beer cans on the floor in the back, Jack.
Just pausing that one for a second here. One of the things that this one was starting to remind me of already, this is Roddy's Hard Times promo, isn't it? Like and for anybody who's
this familiar, is before Hard Times, by the way.
I know, but like this was his version, and I think it's almost more cutting than Hard Times. I think this one's more emotional than Hard Times.
Steve Dunn was he was a top newspaper guy at the time. He wound up becoming an anchor for many, many years on one of the news stations in Portland.
Oh, really? So was it on the same station that this show was airing, or no?
No, this was KPTV 12. I believe he was just a beat writer at this point, or an editorialist at this point. I don't know if he was a newscaster yet. It's possible he was doing both. But I do remember the Steve Dunn guy around 87, 88 being an anchor for like a Channel 6, a CBS.
Interesting. Yeah, because in Calgary, where I grew up, Ed Whalen was he was a news anchor for a while, and he was the announcer for the Calgary Flames hockey team, and then he was also the announcer for Stampede Wrestling, which actually helped the business because it built up a credibility. You've got the main guy from from wrestling, and I think he also did chuck wagon racing. But he had a main guy from hockey, chuck wagon racing, which is a big deal once a year in Calgary, and then also doing Stampede Wrestling through the year. So he was really big in putting over wrestling, unlike this Dunn character who's wanting, just this cheap gimmick of trying to expose a business. Why don't I hit it? Let's keep going with what Roddy's saying here. For those listening, he's taking his jacket off.
He's getting riled up.
Now he's getting comfortable.
First of all, the first thing you gotta know about this Steve is he tried to get in free. Simple as that. And I suppose you come driving up in a Rolls Royce, right, mister? You're talking about Washington Plaza. Talking about real big shot. You see, what you have done here, is insult a whole bunch of people that I am part of. You're talking about torn upholstery.
Just for reference, the Oregonian is it still in existence? Was it
It is, but like most newspapers, it's not what it once was. But it was huge. It was our number one paper in the state.
Okay, so this was a big deal because also, again, as you said, they're prepping for a big show, and so this guy coming in to try to squash it ahead of time, that's livelihoods on the line.
Well, he already did the big show for the previous Tuesday, and they're finishing up the loop on this day here.
Okay.
Piper on this show was in a tag team match against Ric Flair. It was, so they were rematching, but it was in a tag.
Okay. All right. And for those who are, if anybody's getting upset about me pausing it all the time, this is how this gets me my credibility in terms of fair use, so that we don't run the same thing. So we're adding our commentary as we go. So here's some more of what Roddy has to say.
Junk like this, a whole bunch of nothing but lies. You wouldn't even find this junk in the National Enquirer. A guy that writes like this, you could not write for the basket weaving class of 1942, mister. You couldn't do nothing. Oh, wait, wait, please. This is not for the points. This is just because this guy's a geek, man. You see, he comes up and he says, and I quote, Kurt Hennig goes in the ring, and all these women are flaunting around him, and it just makes them disgusted. What's the problem, Gertrude?
Here he goes.
Ain't you getting no attention? Do you find yourself, Steve, walking in a bar with $100 bill on your forehead and you can't walk out with a male or a female?
Look at the back there. Who's the guy in the ring with him? That guy's dying.
The legendary Dutch Savage. He was a great old school wrestler. Fantastic wrestler.
He's popping huge. Here we go.
But why you ribbing me, man? You're talking about what? You're talking about people, you say, well, you're trying to say is we're low class. The other day, I'm in an arena in Florida, and there's Hank Williams Jr. What you're trying to say is former President Carter's mother, Grandma Carter, has got Billy beer in the back of her car. Is that what you're saying, you geek? Huh?
Is she a wrestling fan?
I'll tell you what.
Huge.
I'll tell you what, man. Yeah. You see, they buy your newspaper. You don't have to. Oh, you geek.
He's controlling himself, barely.
Especially them. They don't have to impress you. You have to impress them. And I want to know something. How does it feel to have an 8th grade education wrestler tell you how to do your job?
Love that. Epic.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Roddy Piper, and I want to congratulate that young gentleman for defending the people of the state of Oregon against a very poorly written thing.
I'm glad we were able to share that one. What happened after that?
There was really no blowback off of that. It was just something that he did, and it just became a legendary promo because in real life there's no storyline. So obviously Steve Dunn, he's not going to retort none of that. Dutch Savage, the man who was the announcer, the interviewer for that, he was a huge professional wrestler back in the 60s and 70s. He was probably the Roddy Piper of the 1970s in the Oregon Territory. And he helped break in like Jimmy Snuka. He took Jimmy Snuka under his wing, the Iron Sheik. He worked programs with them. And there's actually a documentary I got to send to you. And it's from the 1970s. And it's got Dutch Savage and Jesse Ventura and the Iron Sheik all in the 1970s, man.
Whoa.
And and it's a great documentary. And there's a promo in there that I really liked. And he was like, Iron Sheik, I know you're an Arab. And he goes, you don't represent all Arabs because I know many Arabs that are good. And I was impressed with the way in the 70s because it's usually you're foreign, you're bad. But he said, no, I know you're an Arab. I know you're from an Arab country, but you don't represent all Arabs because many of the Arabs I know are good people.
That's a good babyface promo, though. That's good. I like that.
I was impressed that because like in the 1980s, it was just like you dirty foreigner, blah 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 scum.
They would never say that directly, dirty foreigner.
Are you sure about that?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was before my time.
Because in the 1980s, man, they said a lot of things. Greg Valentine talking about the junkyard dog, all right, boy.
Oh, no.
Come here, boy.
Oh, no.
So you don't think they're going to say dirty foreigner. Come on now. You're thinking of today's law. You're thinking with today's
Didn't Triple H also say like, people like you? People like you? To book
WrestleMania 19 in Seattle in 2003.
You were there.
Triple H, I was there, but the promos leading up to it, like you expected Booker T to win. There was no other way. Like the way that Triple H had talked down to him and berated him, there was like no other way. Like you figured, okay, Book's got to win because he's going to be chumped. Yeah, he got buried. He's going to get chumped. Book's going to get chumped. And Triple H, it was very racial, and it made Book seem like lesser than. And so it was like, okay, Book's winning the title. He's got to be winning the title because if not, and then you realize, oh, well, Vince is a piece of garbage. So,
that's the thing when we talk about like baby faces and heels, man. Like and when I asked you if you're going and working in the Fed, as we call it, back in the day, I don't know if that would be a fun life. I don't know if that would be a good life. I've watched enough Dark Side of the Ring to know that it's not good for you. You'd probably not be talking to me right now if you got into it earlier. And
I've said that before, though. I have said that before with like, I'm kind of glad that I didn't get into it to the 90s because I'd probably be dead.
Yeah.
Because it was just the lifestyle that it was. It was, very rough. And, as me, I was not the most emotionally secure or smart person in my 20s. I was very go along, get along, and I still kind of was in my 30s as well. I truly didn't become like more stable mentally until my 40s, and more wise.
That's when we got
life.
That's when we got you.
Well, you guys caught me when I was kind of in my cocoon.
Twilight years.
I was transitioning from, the monster to the more human being that I'm trying to be now, that I am now. So, but the thing is like, I still, when I get into the training sessions on those Saturdays with the guys, that monster comes back. So.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. And that's the thing too. That's where it worked so well for us, is because, let him loose, let him do his thing. And then, let my game come in and try to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
And keep it under control.
Do my thing and then clean up later.
Exactly. But, man, knowing full well that you're somebody I can always depend on. I am like I said before, I'm a huge fan of your body of work as a wrestler. I've had the absolute privilege of getting to work with you, getting to not only work with you in the ring, but outside of the ring. And for the listeners down there, it's really cool for me to have one of my best friends in the world see what I'm seeing in this world, know what's going down, and take the leap of faith and who came down to Paraguay and is making it for himself again down here. And it's great to have you down here. And I would love to have you back on the show again, because we've got a lot we can keep talking about. And we'll I get a feeling that this is going to be a very popular episode once it goes across the audio streams. But
well, you people better listen and you better share it, or I'm going to come to each and every one of your houses and you're going to regret
it. So, I think this would be a good place to wrap up today, only because I'm running the data off my phone and I don't want it to just cut out on me a second time. So
we'll be back.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. Maybe one of these days I'll get another camera in here. You'll come out here and we'll do it in the same room, live and in person.
Let's do that. Yeah.
So thank you again, Sully, for coming on to High Trust Low Context. This has been another edition of High Trust Low Context. Thank you all for joining us today, especially those who watched us live. I'm El Chaco, signing off. Viva Cristo Rey. God bless.
God bless and ciao.